Can you imagine a child whose bright eyes sparkle with secrets, whose tiny hands are stained with someone's blood? How does an 11-year-old girl become a killer? What sinister forces shape a young mind, twisting innocence into cruelty? Today, we step into the haunting true story of Mary Bell, the girl who took 2 innocent lives, leaving behind a trail of fear. In the late 1960s, Scotswood, Newcastle, was a bleak landscape of poverty and crime. Families lived in crumbling homes, while drunken fights echoed through the streets. Unsupervised children wandered through abandoned buildings, finding adventure in Rat Alley, a rubble-strewn demolition site that became their playground. Among them was Mary Bell, a girl with striking blue eyes. Unlike the others, she was wild and unpredictable, a storm in human form. Soon, that storm unleashed a devastation no one saw coming. Mary Flora. Bell's childhood was steeped in neglect and pain. Born on May 26, 1957, in Northumberland, she was unwanted from the start. Her mother, Betty Bell, a 17-year-old prostitute, resented her deeply, while her father, Billy Bell, a violent alcoholic, filled their home with chaos. No love, no guidance, and no safety. Her fate seemed sealed from the very beginning. Betty made no secret of her hatred, attempting to kill her more than once. She pushed her off a roof at 3 and later forced sleeping pills on her. Even when injured, Mary was left to suffer alone. Perhaps the most devastating abuse Mary suffered was at her mother's hands. By 5, Betty allowed clients to sexually abuse her, a horrific betrayal shattering her childhood. The constant exploitation warped Mary, leaving her unable to love or trust, filling her with bitterness. Mary's traumatic childhood led to aggressive and manipulative behavior. She burned a classmate with a cigarette and harmed animals, showing a deepening darkness. Despite these signs, no one intervened, and classmates learned to avoid her, fearing her unpredictable outbursts. Beyond Mary's unsettling nature, she formed a disturbing bond with Norma Bell, her submissive yet older neighbor. Together, they terrorized Scotswood. On May 11, 1968, they pushed a 3-year-old off an air raid shelter. The next day, they attacked 7-year-old Pauline. Mary tried to strangle her while Norma held her down. Though Pauline escaped, their violence escalated.
Pinned us down, and Mary had grabbed us by the neck and started strangling us. And then she had her hand here and she was getting the sand and then pouring at my mouth, and I couldn't go in quick enough, and she tried to stuff her fingers down, basically, to get it further down. And obviously I was terrified. And I think Norma was a little bit frightened when she seen what Mary was doing, because Norma jumped up. And by that time, she had jumped up, and I managed to struggle and get free and run home.
The darkness of their actions reached a terrifying new peak on May 25th, the day of the first killing. It was just a day before Mary's 11th birthday. Mary lured 4-year-old Martin Brown to an abandoned house at 85 St. Margaret's Road. She found a gap and slipped inside. Taking him upstairs to an empty room, she gently massaged his neck. Then, she covered his nostrils with one hand and tightened her grip around his throat, causing him to die. Later that day, 3 boys entered the same abandoned house, searching for scrap wood. To their horror, they found Martin's lifeless body lying flat on his back. Blood and saliva dripped down his cheek, and an empty pill bottle lay nearby. They ran for help, and he was brought to Newcastle Hospital, but was pronounced dead. Meanwhile, Mary returned to St. Margaret's Road with Norma, hoping to show her the body, but the crowd turned them away. At first, people thought Martin might have accidentally overdosed on pills he found in the room because there were no clear signs of violence. But after a post-mortem, it was revealed that Martin had not overdosed. His cause of death remained a mystery for a while. The chilling behavior continued the day after Martin's death. Mary and Norma, feeling emboldened, broke into a nursery school on Woodland Crescent. They caused chaos in the classroom. Among the mess, they left 4 handwritten notes. One of the notes read, "We did murder Martin Brown," and another, the most disturbing of all, said, "I murder so that I may come back." These notes had been written the previous night in Mary's bedroom, using a method where she and Norma took turns writing each letter. This made the handwriting hard to trace back to Mary, and it could even suggest that Norma was involved if needed. On the same day, Mary wrote a diary entry about Martin's death. She even drew a picture of his lifeless body with a bottle of pills beside it, labeling the pills. Later, this drawing would be used as evidence in court. Even though Mary claimed she hadn't seen Martin's body, the drawing was so accurate that it could only have been created by someone who had been there. Sadly, this important piece of evidence wasn't discovered until after Mary killed again. In the days that followed, Mary and Norma's actions became even more disturbing. They visited Martin's aunt, asking strange questions like, "Do you miss Martin?" and "Do you cry for him?" A few days later, they visited Martin's mother, June Brown. When June opened the door, Mary asked if she could see Martin. When June explained that Martin had died, Mary simply replied, "I know he's dead. I just wanted to see him in the coffin." Despite the growing suspicions about the girls, the local community still believed Martin's death was an accident. As a result, local residents staged a protest to raise awareness about the dangerous abandoned houses in the area. The protest sign read, "Rat Alley tenants want action, not promises." In a chilling twist, Mary Bell could be seen holding that very sign in a photo taken during the protest. This image added another unsettling layer to the story, showing just how deeply involved Mary and Norma were in the events following Martin's tragic death. 2 months after Martin Brown's murder, Mary Bell struck again, claiming another victim on July 31st. 3-year-old Brian Howe was playing outside with Mary, Norma, and his dog, Lassie. That evening, when Brian didn't return home, his worried parents began searching for him. Shockingly, Mary and Norma eagerly joined the search, walking alongside Brian's sister. As they passed a waste ground called the Tin Lizzie, Mary pointed to the area, suggesting Brian might be playing there. It seemed she wanted his sister to discover his body. Norma dismissed the idea, leading them away. Later that night, Brian's body was found between concrete blocks covered with weeds. He had been strangled, with stab wounds on his thighs, hair cut away, and an M carved into his stomach. Inspector Dobson described it as a terrible playfulness. Following Brian Howe's brutal murder, the pathologist concluded that a child was responsible. Shocked, the police reopened Martin Brown's case, noticing eerie similarities. As the investigation progressed, the connection between the two murders became undeniable, revealing a far more disturbing truth. As the police pressed on, they made a shocking announcement. They were searching for a child killer. Fear gripped Newcastle as officers investigated local children. Among hundreds of suspects, Mary Bell stood out. She eagerly involved herself in the case, pushing forward to hear details, which raised Inspector Dobson's suspicions. The investigation took a darker turn during Brian Howe's funeral. As the coffin emerged, Mary stood laughing and rubbing her hands, unsettling Dobson. When officers arrived at Mary's home, her father, William Billy Bell, refused to let them meet her. But the breakthrough came when a 9-year-old boy with a mental age of 4 claimed he had witnessed Brian's murder. His account confirmed the truth. Mary and Norma were responsible. Convinced, the police brought both girls in for questioning. With Mary and Norma in custody, investigators unraveled contradictions in Brian Howe's murder. Norma first denied involvement, but later admitted seeing Mary press on Brian's neck. Mary, in turn, accused Norma of initiating the attack. During the trial, Norma's frightened and confused demeanor led to her acquittal, receiving only 3 years of probation for breaking into a nursery. In contrast, Mary's calm, detached nature resulted in her conviction for manslaughter due to diminished responsibility. Diagnosed with a psychopathic personality disorder, she was sentenced to 12 years at Red Bank Secure Unit, the only female among boys. Norma later faded from public view and reportedly died of cancer in 1989 at age 21. Mary faced severe mistreatment at Red Bank, enduring physical and sexual abuse from inmates and staff. Isolated as the only girl, she turned to self-harm and substance abuse. Her declining mental state led to transfers, first to Style Prison at 16, and later to Moore Court Open Prison. During her incarceration, Mary's relationship with her mother remained strained. Betty Bell visited sporadically but manipulated her emotionally. In a desperate letter, Mary pleaded for her mother to take responsibility, but Betty never did. Instead, she exploited Mary's infamy, selling stories to the press for financial gain. After serving her sentence, Mary Bell was released in 1980, given a new identity, and faced the daunting task of rebuilding her life. She became a mother in 1984, fiercely protective of her daughter and determined to create a different future. However, her past resurfaced in 1998 when journalists exposed her identity, resulting in lifelong anonymity protections. That same year, she collaborated with Gitta Sereni on Cries Unheard, a book that explored her traumatic childhood and the psychological factors behind her crimes. While she openly confessed to killing Martin Brown, she remained elusive and inconsistent regarding the murder of Brian Howe. Mary Bell's crimes left an indelible mark on Newcastle, her name whispered in fear long after the events had passed. For decades, children were warned with chilling words, "Watch out, Mary Bell will get you." Her story, steeped in tragedy and horror, remains a haunting shadow over the community. Perhaps, in a way, this was exactly what she meant when she declared, "I murder so that I may come back." Thanks for watching. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.